How much is that?
Welcome to the Podcast Editors Mastermind, a podcast about the business side of podcasting. No longer the only, but the first one. Can we still say that?
Yeah.
Tonight we are revisiting a topic we've covered before, but is a constant topic in any podcast editor group. And that is, how in the heck do you get clients? I am Daniel Abendroth. You can find me at rothmedia.audio. To my left over here, depending on how the camera works.
I'm Carrie Caulfield Eric. You can find me at yayapodcasting.com or on Instagram at Carrie Eric.
And I'm Jennifer Longworth at Bourbon Barrel Podcasting.
And unfortunately, not joining us tonight is Brian Ensminger, but you can still find him at toptieraudio.com and at Top Tier Audio on all the socials. And if there's anything we talk about and you want to leave a comment or give us feedback or just want to see the show notes, you can find us at podcasteditorsmastermind.com and just find this episode. Or if you're in chat, we would love to hear your comments, as we have from Steve Stewart. Looking forward to this one. Yay. Heidi Stabert, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. We're so glad to have you. And if you're listening to this in the future on replay or on the audio, we do stream this every other Thursday at 8:05 p.m. Central Time, 9:05 Eastern. And we'd love to have you join the conversation because we have been doing this for a long time, but we don't have all the answers. And we love learning from other people that have different insight and ideas than us, because we can always improve. And I could definitely use some improvement, and I would love to have your help. So welcome, everyone. And yeah, this is a big one. I mean, this is in the industry. I mean, this is kind of like the thing. How do you get started when you haven't been doing it and for one, low barrier of entry makes it easy for a lot of people to get into it. But there's more to podcast editing than actually editing podcasts.
What?
I know. And just like with anything, there's more to acting, there's more to being a musician, there's more than just doing the thing. It's getting out there and getting in front of people that are willing to give you money to do such a thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I realized I was really close-ended. Sorry.
I was like, yes.
All right.
You got
Agreed.
Good
Okay,
night,
cool.
everybody. That was a great show.
Yes. It's hard. Give up. And see you next week.
Well, I'm in some other creator groups on Facebook, not podcast related. And this question comes up there too. How do I get more clients? How do I find clients? And I'm like, hey, you should tune into the Podcast Editor Mastermind show. That might have helped them.
Yeah. Hey, we did talk about this. So if you want to hear how we all got our first clients, you can check out episode 3. I guess we can kind of revisit it. I got started on Fiverr. So I did my own podcast. It was awful, the show itself, but I love doing the post-production. Put myself on Fiverr for $5. It was miserable experience, but I learned a lot. I gained a few clients, and I was able to kind of grow and grow, raise my prices. And I got lucky enough to fall into a niche that was really good for podcasting.
Yeah, so I started on Upwork. I made a little bit more than $5. But before, I hate when podcasters say this, but before we started the show, we were talking, I asked Jennifer about her first client, and we were just kind of reminiscing about how dismally low our rates actually were and how far we've come. And this came up, I don't know if you guys caught it, but Podbean did a how to become a podcast editor session today, and I will share. It was recorded, so you can go back and watch it. And it had some other editors, and they talked about the difference between their first client and where they are now, and just finding clients in general. But everybody, they asked there, what was the rate for your first client? Because how do you come up with that number? And I pulled my number out of thin air and was like, $40 for editing an hour-long show note, or editing an hour-long episode, doing show notes, doing the graphic, posting on the website, and posting on social media, and uploading to their podcast host. So
Wow.
yeah. So turned out I was making like $1.25 an hour. But it gave me experience doing the thing. So I don't yes, the rates on Upwork, though, I do believe have come up for podcast editing. It's like a more valuable skill. And I will say the first episode we did was 2 years ago, right before the world changed completely.
Literally like the week before.
Yeah.
Like there was trickles. Like I know people were aware of it and they had hand sanitizer and but it was.
Yeah. So even the market has changed. And that's why I was like, hey guys, let's do an episode on finding clients. Well, we can do climates too, but because so much has changed and podcasting seems bigger now.
Seems bigger?
See, just a little. Maybe about 2 million podcasters, coming into the market and more every day. So clients are potentially everywhere, right? I'll just say that my approach at the beginning was having an understanding that I was starting out and I was going to have to figure this out. There was no podcast editors mastermind then. So I didn't have the extra help. And I started before I found any of the podcast Facebook groups like Podcast Editors Club. So I was literally just guessing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I used Upwork as a tool to figure out how. I mean, at the time, it didn't feel like that. I'm totally hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But I realized though, what was actually happening was there was a learning curve that was happening for it, and I was getting paid for it, and that's something.
I know a lot of people will tell you don't do work for free or don't undercharge. I would say that's not bad advice, but sometimes there is value in doing free work if you're just starting out and you need that experience, or it could be a potentially good connection. Just make sure that you kind of put in the restrictions. So don't have an open-ended contract with somebody. It's yeah, I'll do your show for free in exchange for a shout out or whatever. I mean, put an end date, that kind of thing. But I mean, there is some value in just being able to work on another show.
You know what? That now you said that thing about shout out. So there are two things that are very valuable if you're doing work for free. One is asking that person if you can be the sponsor of their show, because you are essentially giving them a service, right? And the other one is credits, having your name at the end or being able to put in a little. I did this for one client in exchange for a reduced rate. Is I recorded and put in my own credits at the end of the show, so it's a little advertisement.
I have a couple of clients to where at the end of the show notes, we have show notes and editing done by Roth Media or that kind of thing. So it's also we are in the credits, but it's also kind of good for SEO.
Oh yeah.
Because the way Google works is the more quality links back to your website, the higher your website will rank. And so we have our clients linking back to us, which shows our website is credible. I don't know how effective it is.
No, I love
because
that.
we do absolutely no SEO work, and I haven't even looked at my website in way too long. But that is something to think about.
Heidi says that's a good idea. I never thought of being this sponsor in exchange.
It's rarely a bad idea, but just kind of keep in mind the quality of the sponsorship. So when I look at my clients, my niche is life coaches. So for the most part, most of my clients, advertising on their show probably wouldn't do a whole lot. Because I mean, a few might be my ideal client. But a show that would be really good is a show I work on that targets other life coaches. And so then if I sponsor that show, now I'm actually, her audience is my ideal client. So it's kind of keep in mind who the ideal client, or who the show's audience is. And does that align with who you want or are able to work with?
I think that's good. Okay, but we're all ahead in actually working with the clients. So what about the finding the clients? Because what I'm curious is for people in our audience is, how did you get your first client? Or are you still looking for clients? So I want to know. So you can drop that in the comments and let us know how you got your first client, because we definitely love to hear that.
Yeah, we shared ours.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. I did back on episode 3. You can listen more there. But I found my first freelance client on Facebook. They posted needing help with something else. And I knew they had a podcast. And so I reached out to them about what they wanted help on. And then I said, by the way, I can help you with your podcast. And after the conversation, it was a yes. And I charged them a whole $35 per episode.
Ooh, charging the big bucks.
Soon after, it got my second client for $25. And that was just the bane of my existence for a while. That $25 episode per episode that was way too long, with a blue Yeti in a big open room with kids.
Oh, no.
Sounds like a great time.
Yeah. So if that
fills me with dread.
So I feel like these like kinds of clients are really like, it's trial by fire and you learn a lot. Like I feel just the learning curve from those first editing clients was like crazy, because I'm like, well, how do we get out like the lawnmower from the
Okay, side note, never recommend a blue Yeti.
Yeah, right. Andrea says that she got her first client by mentioning it, mentioning she edits on her own podcast.
And Heidi says, a friend knew that I did my own show and asked me to do theirs. They're the one getting my new email draft.
Nice.
So she still has them, right?
Yay.
That's awesome.
And I think that reflects Brian's. I'm pretty sure because he has his own podcast, and I think somebody reached out to him, or I guess on his show, had asked him to edit their show. Because I think how Brian got his first client.
Yeah. So there's, one way right there to get start getting clients is to have a podcast, right?
Yeah, because that's a great way to kind of showcase what you're capable of. In a way, I mean, it's hard to, because Steve Stewart has said the sign of a good podcast editor is you don't know that the show is edited. But if you can kind of go back to your own podcast as a way to kind of demonstrate your skill level, that goes a long way. James says they got my first clients by having my own podcast and inviting guests to start their own.
Oh, very cool.
Ooh, that's interesting. And so I kind of follow up to that, James. What was your podcast about? Because another thing to keep in mind, so a hobbyist podcast is probably not going to have the funds to pay a decent amount. If it's just 3 dudes in their basement, they're probably not going to be able to afford the rates that you need to charge to make this your full-time job, as opposed to a business, a small business or a solopreneur or somebody that's going to have a marketing budget that they can put towards paying an editor.
I would almost argue not to exclude the hobbyist, or not to maybe be biased against the hobbyist, because there are 2 reasons. One is sometimes the hobbyists can afford it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of my highest paying clients, it is a Star Wars recap podcast where it is 4 guys getting as nerdy as you could possibly imagine over Star Wars, right? And I went into that consultation thinking he's not going to be able to afford me because this is a hobby podcast. Well, turns out he just keeps throwing more money at me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So don't discount that.
Sure.
And then my second thing is that if the hobbyist has a good show, right? If you take a listen and the content is good or the idea is good, they can then grow that hobbyist show into a money-making endeavor. And I had that, or I do have that with one client. She did a show on her thing she was passionate about, nobody was talking about. 225 episodes later, she's making 6 figures and, is compensating me appropriately for something that is incredibly easy for me to edit. So
Nice.
I would keep an open mind
Yeah, my point wasn't so much like ignore hobbyists and like don't even think about it. It's more like if you're working a 9 to 5 and you have like so much time, energy, and money to put into your marketing or to attract clients, put that energy and whatever into avenues that probably have better output. I guess is my point. So like if you have like 10 hobbyists and 10 small businesses, you're better off
with the small business.
Throwing your net at the businesses because they'll more often than not have the money. Like if you have the opportunity to work with hobbyists, like don't just say no because you probably won't have don't look for free horse and a mount, whatever. But like, hobbyists can definitely be a good source. It's just don't like put all your energy into that kind of thing.
Okay. So what was that? Don't look for a horse and a mouse.
I know what you're trying to say, but I can't remember the words either.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
That's it.
Okay. So James followed up. It was about addiction recovery, and I was interviewing experts in nutrition, coaching, etc., not hobbyists.
Okay.
And then Alejandro remembers his first client was from Upwork. He wasn't the best client. Now that I remember, he had a ton of red flags that I didn't notice because I was a rookie. And the other quote unquote client I had was myself. There's an audio drama that's over there on SoundCloud. I hope you can find it.
Really?
And we are definitely going to go look for it after the show.
We're definitely going to make it our intro for this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, poor Alejandro.
And Patrick says, hey, welcome back, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
Great to have you.
I love Patrick.
I was going to move on to another strategy that has been good for me, but unless you had anything to add. Did she say don't lick a gift horse? That is also a piece of solid advice. Don't lick a gift horse. Probably don't lick any horse. But hey, I'm not here to judge or shame anybody. So something recently, a couple months ago, that has actually been huge for me is I was a guest on a podcast. It was a podcast about, so like I said, I work with life coaches, and this was a show that teaches other life coaches. So I did an interview to an audience that was my ideal client. And then after that interview went live, I had like 5 or 6 people reach out to me afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah. And currently one has signed off. It's kind of a weird thing. So one client is a guest on a lot of podcasts. So she's going to put all of her interviews onto like one feed. 2 are launching new shows. And then I'm in talks with 1 or 2 more. And that was just from one interview talking about starting a podcast and how podcasting can be good for their business.
Wow.
And one piece of advice that Steve Stewart always throws out is going to conventions or other gatherings that aren't podcast specific. So he kind of promotes FinCon a lot. And I know several podcast editors that have kind of made that their niche. So getting in front of people that aren't podcasters, but can benefit from being podcasters, if that's clear at all.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And it makes me think of kind of what Jennifer does. You want to tell everybody the kinds of things that you do to build brand awareness?
Yeah, building brand awareness is, the subtitle on our graphic on this was the long game, because that's the client seeking game I play. My niche is Central Kentucky. It's the B right in here in Bourbon. So I'm seeking the female entrepreneur in Central Kentucky who may or may not already have a podcast. So I'm at events like Women Leading Kentucky. They had a bourbon tasting event recently. So yeah, I sponsored the food and beverage because it just kind of made sense. So then my name, my Bourbon Barrel Podcasting was there at a bourbon tasting event for Women Leading Kentucky. And I had someone that I helped with her podcast a few years ago say, oh, I didn't get to catch up with you, but I saw that you had been there. I need to talk about podcasting again. So I'm like, okay, cool. My prices have increased since we talked last, but here's my link. And then I also go to Central Kentucky Women Entrepreneur. I'm a member of 2 different chambers here in the area, Commerce Lexington and Georgetown Scott County Chamber of Commerce. So I try to go to those luncheons. So I am trying just to sow seeds here locally in my area. And some of them are starting to sprout. One of them has taken a year and lots of tender care and watering. But it's coming. We worked on a little bit. We're getting there. Some grow a lot faster than others. It's like in the Bible, the parable. Some of them sprout out really fast, but have no roots and die. That's some people. Some of them even giving you their money and then they die. And it's like, oh, well, that's very sad for you. But thanks for paying me up front on that one.
Yeah.
But I have a few going to probably start into the year, beginning of next year, who I've known for a while, or they're getting to know my name. They've seen me at events and things like that. So that's the game I'm playing right now on how to find clients.
And I think that kind of game really pays off because, and this kind of goes along with Andrea's comment. So Andrea says a bunch of early clients came from a free class she taught in Chicago at an entrepreneurial learning center. And that her class was on how to launch a workshop. And I have done classes and workshops where I've either been a student and been in actively, you know me, where I can't shut up. Or, I'm leading the workshop, right? And it kind of connects also to being a guest on a podcast, right? So you're basically putting yourself out there and saying, this is what I do, right? And if you do that consistently enough, people will remember. Like, it is a long game. They won't necessarily be like, oh yeah, I need an editor, come here. However, they will store it in their brain. And even if they're not ready, now they know who you are, they know what you do. When their friend or their colleague or somebody is ready to have a podcast or to, hire an editor and ask this friend who has been interacting with you online or at events in your community, you'll come to the top of their mind.
Right. That's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll have heard from you, your company name, your, website, your whatever, that you'll be fairly easy to find and connect with.
Well, when someone said, oh, I have heard of you. I've had that happen a couple of times. Like, oh, you're Bourbon Barrel podcasting. I've heard that. And that's just kind of cool.
Awesome. That's
like,
so
I've
awesome.
seen your coaster. Oh yeah, I've encountered you before. So that was cool.
And you never know what that can lead to. I feel like, Carrie, that's kind of where you've been, because like you've been out there doing all kinds of different things and just like networking and just kind of building like your personal brand almost. But just like you're well known in podcasting. And it seems like you've gotten some like really incredible opportunities just because like you put yourself out there.
And that's really true. And I was thinking about this earlier, like as I was getting ready for the show tonight, is 5 years ago, you didn't know who I was. Like nobody knew who I was. I didn't know who you were. Like I was just not a part of anything. And, when I started the business and I was like, I'm really going to do this, I understood that it was going to be a marathon and that I would have to train for it. Right. Because I knew a little bit about digital marketing and learned some lessons from my podcast. I knew a little bit of I kind of understood how to network. So that's just what I did. And I would literally spend 2-3 hours online in Facebook. I would attend Facebook events or virtual events because at the time, I didn't have any money to go to conferences, right? I wasn't working and I wasn't really making money as an editor. I was making like $1.25 an hour. That was in the Upwork days. And I just kept at it and I just kept showing up and kept trying to be as helpful as possible. I didn't do anything to burn any bridges down because I was like, anybody could be a potential client. Right. And I talked to people and that's how I built my business is through networking. And through that, I have met some phenomenal people. Like, I don't know how. It was just like, oh, this is a friend of a friend and they're looking for a podcast editor. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, okay, this is like Stephen King. What are you talking about? Right? Like, it never questioned my ability to do the work because I think we're all smart. We can figure it out. Even if a client brings something new to us or they want something new that we haven't necessarily done before, it's so easy to learn. I think the hardest part is the finding the clients, is the like waiting and waiting and waiting. But I will tell you, if you just continue showing up and like being part of the community you want to serve and being part of the podcast community, there's an inflection point where all that work starts to pay off. All that like networking starts to pay off. But it is like, Jennifer is the one who came up with the idea that finding clients is a long game, right? When we play this episode. And the more I think about it, the more I think she's absolutely right, because it took me, like, I'm in my 5th year now, and I have only, like, I turned a profit for like the first time last year, like a healthy profit. And I didn't start getting these bigger jobs until last year. Right. So that's what, 4 years. It took me 4 years to get here. I mean, you guys knew who I am, but like, y'all don't give me money very much.
It's usually just pay Alejandro.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly I just give I was giving my money to people. But yeah, networking is super critical. And that's marketing. You have to talk to people. You have to be in the room. You have to show up.
Now, I'm a big fan of in-person, in-your-face marketing and networking and stuff, but there's still the opportunity to get in on the pigeon game or seagulls game in Facebook groups where someone says, hey, does anyone know a podcast editor? And everyone goes, mine, like from Nemo. And everyone just comes in and then the list is full. May have gotten lucky on one of those once. And that's because someone who didn't ask the question was scanning, looking through at people's answers and found me in the answers, even though they weren't the person asking the question. But that is just, I don't have time for that anymore. Like, anybody know a podcast editor? What somebody else
It feels very like the Fiverr experience is like you're just one in a pool of hundreds of other people doing the same exact thing. And the amount of work you have to put into differentiating yourself from them doesn't really pay off. Like the ROI isn't there.
No, not like it used to be. Maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was a lot different. And now it's just like, it's hundreds of comments from people. Yeah. I will say, like, if you see one of those posts and like nobody else has posted yet,
right,
that's when you do it. Or maybe 2 or 3 people posted. That's when you do it, because that's about as far as anybody's going to look, is like 3 posts. And then anybody, when they see they have 100 comments, they're just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I just post my booking link. If they want more information, they can book a time with me.
That's really smart.
That's all I do. It's like, well, yeah, let's chat. Jennifer, book me, whatever.
Yeah.
Bookme.name/J Longworth.
And the reason that can work is because you have already demonstrated there with that booking link that you are going to make their life easier. Because it's not DM me. It's not like, here's my website. It's like, hey, you want to talk? Let's talk.
Most of them don't care.
Yeah.
So that gets rid of them really easily.
Yeah, but that was of course, that's my experience from 1,000 years ago. And now I'm like, no, nobody book anything. Nobody. We have a comment from James who has an interesting point. Is he sells his clients on interviewing their ideal clients. And one has grown his biz to $5 million a year as a marketing agency. And that speaks to more like what you say once you have the client in like the potential client in conversation. So that's like his unique selling proposition, right? That's what that would be. So it's good to understand like how, like, it's one thing to get like the consultation, right? The discovery call. It's another thing, and we have an episode on this. It's another thing to be like, here's why you should hire me.
So James is, start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, start the conversation. Yeah, which is really good because I worked on a show who he interviews startup founders because he had like his other company sold like service for founders. So he could bring on like a founder. They could talk about their company, all they do. He didn't care so much about that. But like in that conversation, they would tell him what all their pain points are and everything they're struggling with. At the end of the interview, you can be like, hey, I got this thing that could solve all your problems. So I'm not sure, like finding that kind of niche, starting a show where you interview who you think should start a podcast. And then like maybe at the end of the interviews, be like, hey, have you thought about adding a podcast to your marketing strategy?
That's actually kind of brilliant.
I actually have a client who's kind of almost doing that for me in a way.
Okay.
She's still trying to find her way with her podcast, I think, but she's interviewing other business owners and they do so great on the mic. She's like, you know what? You really need to have your own podcast.
There you go.
We haven't convinced all of them to do it yet, but we're getting there. That's another one of those watering seeds. So Ashley is planting little seeds for me as well because she's like, oh, okay. She's a headshot photographer. So people come in and do headshots and hey, while you're here, you're a business owner, let's get you on my podcast.
Yeah, I love the idea of planting seeds. I mean, when we joke about like the mattress companies and like HelloFresh and like using podcasting for brand awareness, I mean, yes, it's funny, but it also works. Because we're literally talking about like Casper and HelloFresh on our podcast.
Stamps.com.
Nothing to do. Yeah.
I would never have known that stamps.com existed if it wasn't for their constant like advertising on every podcast I listen to.
I like actually bought a Third Love bra from a podcast.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have me undies yet?
Wow.
This is a not explicit show, Daniel. So calm down.
Sorry.
No, but I'm saying like it works. Like that brand awareness actually works. And so Patrick has a question. Are you more likely to find more luck with podcasters who have bad audio, who want awesome audio, or podcasters who are already doing great with editing but want their time back?
So I can't speak from experience to this. I'm just kind of using like my own kind of instinct or gut reaction. But I would kind of lean towards the second one because like a podcaster who has crap audio, it's hard to start the conversation because like, hey, your podcast sounds like crap. And it's like you almost have to like start the conversation by insulting their work.
Yeah.
Whereas like a podcaster who's doing great, they see the value of their show and like editing takes a long time. So it's like, it's easier to sell them on buying their time back rather than improving their audio because like quality audio can only help so much. I know like podcast editors, we want, everything needs to sound great. There is a point where like you lose that ROI, like having pristine audio versus good enough audio isn't really going to like make a huge difference. But being able to get more time back can go a long way on. So like if you were like a small business owner with a podcast, spending money on to get rid of the editing aspect so you can spend your time doing something else is more valuable than just improving the audio.
And I would argue that podcasters don't know how bad they sound.
That's why the Blue Yeti is so popular.
Yes. So, for example, I had a consultation today. It was a guy. He was like, I can't get my podcast out because I just am such a perfectionist when it comes to editing, which, by the way, is a common thing I hear in consultations. I'm a perfectionist, right? And so I spend too much time on it. I can't get it done. What he did not mention that was a problem, because I always ask, like, what are your struggles with editing your podcasts? What he didn't struggle with was leveling and mixing. And when I listened to his podcast, I mean, he knew he had some, like a recent episode that had problems. And let me tell you, it had problems. They're doing phone calls, phone interviews, and they're literally holding the phone up to the microphone.
No.
Oh.
I had a client, like she was on Zoom, but she had her speakers out. So she was recording the interview through the speakers into her mic. rather than actually record through. Oh, okay.
Right. So,
That's
okay, so that's what I mean. It's like the clients don't realize. I mean, he knew that one was maybe a little bit difficult, but like all the other ones were okay. And so the one thing he never mentioned was that his podcast doesn't sound good. I will say it doesn't sound terrible, but there's like a gazillion miles of room for improvement. So I would argue that podcasters all think they sound just fine. And of course, now that our ears since the pandemic are all used to Zoom, yeah, they don't hear it anymore at all. Like
Zoom is like the new standard.
Yeah.
For audio quality.
That's sad.
Which is a shame.
It is.
It's very sad.
It is extremely sad. Anyway, do you give a percentage to that person, peers who recommend your service? How much of a percent you give? Nobody gets anything from me.
Nope.
I don't.
Yeah. Somebody recommends you, it's because you provide them awesome service and you're worth every penny. There are people who do that though, like referral fees.
I tried that with my clients one time. And like the amount that I was willing to give them wasn't really worth it to them. Like it didn't, I got nothing out of it by offering like so much, like $100 per, like if you refer somebody that starts a podcast, like I'll give you $100. Like nobody cared about that.
Did you try, was it you who tried giving them a discount on their rate for that? Or is that somebody else?
I think that's somebody else. I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, because you could be like, if you bring me a new client or like refer somebody to me and they sign a contract with me.
That's key.
Yeah, that's very key. I will discount your editing for this month by like $100. I think I've heard of people doing that.
I think that's essentially what it was. It's like $100 credit on your invoice.
Okay.
Rather than just like mailing them a check or Venmo. James mentioned, I find podcasters don't know how bad they sound initially, and they don't know how good you make them sound with your work. So it's hard for them to value the effort. Yeah.
I had a client break up with me once, thanking me or scolding me or whatever they said about the minor edits I did to their show. And I was like, the minor edits I do for your show. You want to make me really mad? Call what I did to your show minor editing. Thanks for playing. I'm glad we're breaking up now. Bye.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That just makes room for people who will appreciate you and then pay you appropriately. Because the thing about finding new clients is you're not going to keep them all forever.
Yeah. Never be afraid to walk away from a bad client.
Yeah.
If you're in conversations with a potential client, I would suggest not putting so much emphasis on like making their audio sound good, because like people don't care and they don't know the effort that goes into it, but they can see the value that they can give from having more time. Or if you're helping them with the like process of getting started. So I would say like one idea is like try to kind of like what Andrea did when she taught at like the Chicago Entrepreneurial Learning Center, is like finding opportunities to teach people how to launch a podcast, because then you can get in their minds if they're willing to pay for editing now or in the future.
You know, when I had a studio space a few years ago, pre-pandemic, remember that, y'all? Anyway, I was doing classes on a regular basis about how to start a podcast. 0 of the people who attended those ever hired me. So I hope other people have better luck. I guess they came. They thought, but then again, it was pre-pandemic, so it's hard. But
that was like right around that time, wasn't it?
I opened in August of 2019.
Not a great time to start a...
Like nobody ever came back around, but maybe they would be ready now. I didn't find them all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think classes are a great idea. And because again, you're planting seeds, right? Going back to your beautiful metaphor, you are planting seeds.
Wish I could claim that I came up with that.
I think that's like way older than anybody who's ever had social media. Yeah. So yeah, podcasters don't know how bad they sound.
Show Andrea's comment. I'm not logged in. I can't do it.
So Andrea says, I had a client listen to his raw audio once and he said, do I always sound this bad? Then he apologized. We are in business for life. And then on that same thread, James says, I find podcasters don't know how bad they sound initially, and they don't know how good you make them sound with your work. So it's hard for them to value the effort. And I find that there comes a time in every podcaster's life who doesn't know how bad they sound, where they have a guest or something where there's some sort of horrible audio problem. And that is the moment where you can make them understand. Like, oh, this is what you do. Okay. Do I ever sound that bad? Well, actually, you do. Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. And I know we're like getting close to time. We all said how we got clients to begin with. How are we, like, where have you gotten your last client? And I want to know from the people in the comments there in our audience too, where did you get your last client from?
So my most recent clients have been from, I was a guest on a podcast talking about podcasting, like how to start a podcast and how a podcast can be beneficial to their business. And that's when I got like 5 or 6 discovery calls right after that went live.
And my newest ones, I had to start the Dropbox for. And that's my next step is Jennifer, start the Dropbox. From Lexington Podcasters, the local meetup group.
Oh yeah, meetup groups are another great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've been communicating with him in just on Facebook and in networking groups and stuff like that for a few years. And now his time has come where he needs me.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not a predictable plan, but it's still.
Quite frankly, my last client, and it was a while ago, surprisingly, I had joined Air Media, right? The Air Media Association, which is a great resource for everyone, by the way. He was at a dinner with somebody talking about his podcast, and he wanted to hire an editor and a consultant. And they told him about Air Media, and he found me on there. He found my listing, contacted me, and it's been an awesome thing ever since.
Nice.
So that was unexpected. That was the first time, actually, that I'd ever gotten anybody from Air Media.
Facebook user said that their last client came from a Facebook group. Andrea says referrals from collaborators. And I'm curious what this collaboration was. Heidi said that childhood friend who I was catching up with on social media told her what I did and mentioned that if she ever wanted to start a podcast, ... Patrick says no clients yet, but I'm not ready yet, but I suspect I have potential clients in past and future guests for my show. Excellent. And Steve Stewart, my most recent client, a client I met at FinCon 17, started a mastermind group. He sent me 3 clients this year. I'm assuming FinCon 17 means FinCon from 2017.
Been a bit.
5 years ago. Oh, the collaboration was an audio engineer whose studio I use. Oh, perfect. So yeah, were we not just talking about the long game and how 5 years later, 3 clients in a year? That is a very valuable connection.
I have gotten, and not clients necessarily, because I swear to God, my business model is please don't hire me. I can't take any more work. Or please don't contact me. I need a vacation. But I'll get consultations from podcast interviews I've done like 5 years ago. And I don't even know what I said.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
You know? So, but it shows you that that is a long game too.
Yeah. I do want to kind of clarify. I don't want to dehumanize this. I know in a lot of like the bro marketing I see on Facebook or whatnot, or like in certain industries, it's just like all about networking in order to get something out of it. Like that, I don't think is the right way to take it. So like, Steve Stewart getting, 3 referrals from somebody he met back in 2017. Not only is that valuable for his business because he got 3 clients, he's also had a good relationship with this person for 5 years. So like, don't network just to get something out of it. Like network honestly, like because there are amazing people who are just good to be around. Like I haven't gotten a single client from Carrie, Yeah, like she's one of my closest friends. So like and same thing with Jennifer and Brian. Like I haven't gotten any business from like anybody in this mastermind, but I would not trade that networking in for somebody that gave me 3 clients.
But if I knew someone in Delaware who needed a podcast editor and Carrie might have 5 minutes in her day, maybe I would say, talk to her for 5 minutes and see what happens. And then Carrie can say, no, go away.
How dare you?
How dare you? Okay. How much? Okay.
I'm still doing it.
Yeah. I have a price. And the reason, because I started to feel bad for a second, was like, we've never given each other clients and we've been like hanging out all this time.
We all do the same thing.
And we have very different niches, right? And very different. Like Brian would never edit the shows I edit. Like,
I don't think I could handle the shows you edit.
I'm just thinking in like terms of like there's some of the shows I've done in terms of content. And but you do life coaches, Daniel, and Jennifer does people in Kentucky. Like, when am I going to run into somebody in Kentucky?
Yeah.
If you ever start editing for someone in Kentucky, I'll smack you digitally across the way.
Like, I'd be like, where are you from? They'd say Kentucky. And I'd be like, oh, here's somebody you should talk to. So I guess networking to me is like just building friendships.
Exactly.
Oh, that's where all my friends are, is from networking groups.
However, I have gotten clients from like other friends in the podcasting community.
Yes.
Right? Or they'll be like, I don't know how to edit this way, or I don't know what they talk, or they seem like they're more your kind of client than my kind of client. And I refer people out. I'm like, I don't think I'm your person, but like, I know this person over here who I think would do a fabulous job with your show and you'd love them.
I had a fellow editor send me some clients once, and it ended up one of them ended up not being a good match, and they went back to him and he's like, I swear I didn't steal them back. I swear I didn't steal them back. I'm like, you can have them back. I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
They didn't like me because I didn't want to use licensed music in their end, you know?
How dare you?
You can have them back.
Yeah. You law-abiding citizen.
Right. Found liable and pay millions of dollars.
This sounds like a record. Are you sure you can use this?
Oh, gosh.
I don't have a pod deck question because I once again, I forgot my deck. Do you have one, Carrie? Do you have one?
Honestly, I meant to, but now I'm like trapped and I can't get to the pod decks card.
Well, I don't have any.
How do you not have any?
I don't have any.
We'll have to fix that.
I got mine from Podfest this past year. Thanks, Andrea, coming in class. Oh, wow, we got 2. What is one thing you wish everyone knew? And then Patrick says, what is your most treasured possession?
Oh, these are hard questions.
I know.
I wasn't prepared for this. I have no idea.
I think one thing everyone knew is, so I see like a lot of, my wife and I started watching like just bad reality television.
Oh gosh.
And like you see on social media, it's just like being able to have like a conversation like with those close to you about how you're feeling, and just having like an honest conversation that's like not getting defensive and that kind of thing. I wish everyone knew how not to be an asshole. I guess like I'm trying to be a little pretentious and answer the question, but we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's just in very different ways.
Be kind to people, right? You know.
Yeah. You know what? I wish everybody knew how to ask for what they want and what they need.
I wish everyone knew how to admit when they're wrong.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
That is something that I've had to learn, is like being able to say like, okay, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. It's so tough.
It is a hard skill. I have to have like a mini tantrum before I do that. Like before I write that email, it's like.
Oh, I see. Happy Cat is going into and out of existence.
Yep.
I love that.
There's a precious treasured possession there.
Yeah. So what would I don't have a treasured possession except for time. And I don't possess much of it.
I'm trying to think, like, because I don't like hang on to things. Like, I'm not nostalgic or
I don't need stuff.
not nostalgic, sentimental.
It'd be like the jewelry that I wear is from my great grandmother and from my grandmother, and those are pretty. They don't come off, so it's not like I can lose them. The little ladies I work with sometimes like, don't take your rings off in the bathroom when you go to a restaurant. They're so cute, and I'm like, oh, they're not coming off. I'm good.
They are forged to my skin.
Yep. It's not a show till a cat or a child shows up.
Yep.
Yeah, so
There
lately
is.
it's not me with the cat, it's me with the child.
Andrew says that her treasured possession is everything my nieces create for me.
Oh,
Aww.
I got a lot of nieces, Andrea. They make a lot of stuff. Oh, God. I want to just do a shout out to Podbean and Steph Fukio. Steph, I probably don't even say your name right. Of Global Podcast Editors, because today they did an event called How to Become a Podcast Editor. They had a panel of Steph and 2 other editors and the Podbean community leader, I think she is. It was fabulous because they talked about podcasting in Latin America. So I think there are a lot of like Latin American and just Latin podcasters who are just need to get ready, because podcasting is like emerging in Latin countries. And then there's a big push here in the US, in the Western world in general, for more Latin podcasts. So you need to put yourself in front of people, period. Put yourself in front of people.
All right, I think that is a time to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you are here live, thank you for comments and contribution to the conversation. And if you're listening to this in the future, thank you so much for giving us the time. If you want the show notes and links or whatever, you know the deal. Go to podcasteditorsmastermind.com. And Jennifer is about to tell you how to become a guest on the show.
If you want to be a guest, go to podcasteditormastermind.com and click Be a Guest. Right? That's still the same thing?
I think so.
Yep, that's it.
It's been a while since I've had to do that.
It's fairly easy.
Okay.
You guys got this.
I am Daniel Abendroth. You can find me at rothmedia.audio.
I'm Carrie Caulfield. Eric, you can find me at yayapodcasting.com or on Instagram at Carrie Eric.
I'm Jennifer Longworth. You can find me at bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com and Bourbon Barrel Podcasting on social as well.
And not joining us tonight is Brian Ensminger. You can find him toptieraudio.com or at toptieraudio on all the socials. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
So
how much is that?
So